Hey everyone, I'm Alex, and I'll be your structural file fighter. Today's lesson is going to cover the importance of versioning your files and file naming conventions. So before you start any project, you want to figure out what the three-letter code you want to use is. I use three letters just because I prefer that. I think it's easier to remember and everything. If you want to do four, go crazy. If you want to add numbers next in there, go for it. But three, I think, is a pretty decent start. To give you an idea, this is what my archive folder looks like, and so you can see all the different shows that have codes in them. And so this way, if I'm like searching in start and I want to just quickly get to a project and look at least the main folder of it, I can just type like hit start, search it in, whatever, or if you're on a Mac, command space, and you can search anything in your computer. All right, let's start a file. So let's say we want to make a new project. Whoops, let's call this OFP, our first project. I'm already breaking naming convention. You know what? Let's do this the right way. So one of the things I'm starting to do is underscores. And the reason for that, and I even bolded it down here, you want to use, for any file and folder names, you want to use underscores, periods, or hyphens, dashes. You don't want to use any of the special symbols. You don't even want to use spaces just because depending on how things go from operating system to operating system, you're going to want the consistency. So a perfect example is I just worked on a show where the composer was working on a Mac and they were doing file or folder names and file names that had like slashes in them, where they would do like the act slash the scene and then the name of the file or whatever. And those weren't showing up on my end at all. They weren't going through Dropbox or anything. And the reason is because Dropbox didn't recognize the slashes. It wouldn't transfer them from his computer to mine. And I have Windows. Basically, avoid any weird symbol things and try and avoid spaces if you can. But spaces aren't terrible. I think they're getting better between different things, at least in terms of compatibility. But generally, you want to kind of keep it with like periods, hyphens, or underscores. So we've made our project. It's called OFP. That is our project code right there. Uh, the next part of our file we're going to want to do is a file description, then the date we made the thing, and then a version. I'm going to go through these things one at a time. But let's say we have our handy little PDF here. It's empty. It's just blank. So we're going to go, whoops, OFP underscore. Let's call this just introduction. Let's say there's like an intro speech in there. So introduction. You could do another underscore for speech, or oops, you could do like that, and then underscore, and then the date, which today is January 29th. I prefer doing periods for dates because I'm weird like that. So 01.29.2025, and then we do a version, which would be underscore v01, and then enter. And that's our file name. Let me step through that a little bit slower though, because that was a little bit fast. OFP is our project name. The introduction speech is the name of what the document is, that we can differentiate it from any other file in there. Yeah, the date keeps you in line for like when the project gets done, but let's say you have like, in my instance, let's say you make a video or you render a 30-second looping clip of a waterfall, and then you make a slight tweak to that, and it's the same file name, the same description, project code, everything, and the same date. Well, what do you do then? You want to version it up. The worst thing you can ever do is name a file and the last word you put is final. Final. Because it takes one adjustment and all of a sudden you're at final. Or final for real. Or final, I mean this time for real final. Those are real file names I've encountered as a teacher. Please version. Learn to version, get it habit, do that. because getting a project named Final Final in a bunch of other projects called Final Final is insane. The trick with versioning, though, is you have to plan ahead in terms of how many mess ups do you think you're going to give yourself. And the reason why I phrase it that way is because this one is named V01. The reason why it's not just V1 is because let's say we do V1 and then we go all the way to V9. And numerically, that's going to list right in the computer. Well, what happens when we hit V12? Well, 1 is less than 9, but 2 is greater than 1. So now V12 is actually going to be between V1 and 9 because it's just going the first digit over and over. So if we stuck a 0 there and then a 0 there, that 12 is going to have to go after the 9. Now, continuing on, let's say we hit version 99. We hit the same problem the second we hit version 103. Now 10 is going to go between 9 and 12. 103 is going to go between 9 and 12. So thinking early on of how much do you think you're going to mess up or how many times do you think you're going to want to edit it, you can either do like 2 digits to give yourself like 100 options or 3, and then you really got to like lay into it. So once you hit that double or single digit, it's double 09, then this is single 012, and then you're back to the hundreds. And then you have 1,000 options. So it's all about the scale you're working with, really. I'm going to give you guys a little preview into my own file structure stuff and kind of what I'll be showing you guys later. But you don't have to understand any of this right now, but I'm just going to show you what versioning does and the importance of like how you name something. This is an old version of my stuff, so it doesn't have the underscores or anything. It's all just spaces, but you'll already notice the numbering of it forces things to be in a certain order. Anonymous is a show that I worked on way back in graduate school. And so this actually allows me to always have a consistent layout of my folders every time, every show. So I always know the top's going to be show reference. So when you need to reference like the different departments, they're all cut here because they're all half them empty folders. I can go to my things, draftings. I have version 14 plot here. This is my one file. But if you go into obsolete, you can see all the different dates and versions of like this is the light plot or the projection plot. This is the system diagram. This is the equipment list because EQP. And so not only does my show have a code, but even some of my paperwork has its own code. So I'm not typing out the full word equipment every single time. And then here I actually stuck the version before the date, but I've changed that since then. Going even further into the versioning things. So, and this is a cool thing I saw. So something else with naming conventions is, let's say this is how, if you have a whole team of people working on something, just name, I mean, this might be obvious, but it's like just name a folder after them. And so that way, when I was working with someone named Jesse, when they have folders or files to work on, it's separate from all of my files. And that's just so we can work on 2 different files at the same time, and their naming convention doesn't get mixed with mine. And then going even farther, another folder naming convention that may or may not be helpful to y'all is, so you'll see with assets, with these sources, they're all named like the different sources that I've pulled from. Not Modelbox, but like let's look at clouds. And hey, look, all these clouds of just naming things I've downloaded or found or whatever. Butcher, all these files that are in the sources. Well, I also have a same folder of that elsewhere in this project, but I don't want to have 2 different clouds folders or 2 different Butcher folders and get them mixed up if I'm like super deep into file and folder land. You'll see if I open the finals, it's the same folder name, but with an F for final. Or if I go into, nope, not mockups. If I go into renders, it's all with an R. So now I can tell the difference between a render, a source, and a final. Thank you guys so much for sticking around. That was our first lesson. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. Don't forget to defragment your hard drives, and I'll see you guys next time.